The last 2 years has been Central, Howard, Howard, Central. Will the MEAC predict those two teams to be at the top of the conference yet again? And also, what order will they be if they are 1-2? Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast. Your number one. I cocked that one back early today. Your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And listen, it's summertime, so I understand that the sports aren't sporting the way that you want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, every single person, every single day, all summer long. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Trei Oliver and Chennis because I think that we're going to get some quotables out of those men on tomorrow's MEAC Media Day. That's what this whole show is about today. I don't think we did this with the SWAC last Monday, but I said, you know what? Let's switch it up and not be so formulaic. Let's give the MEAC the entirety of Monday to shine. Prior to that, in segment 2, we'll be taking a look at the Defensive Player of the Year award, the preseason Defensive Player of the Year, because it's not as cut and dry as I thought that it was going to be, though I did still walk away with the same favorite for the award. But the final rankings, North Carolina Central, Howard. I don't think that anybody will jump in between those two. I think that you'll probably see the Bison and the Eagles 1 and 2 coming into the preseason polls. Yes, Morgan State does have some hype, and I do think people are excited about what you'll see from the Bears, but I don't think that it'll be enough for you to see them be at 1 and 2. I'm predicting a Howard, North Carolina Central finish of 1-2. What that order will be is anybody's guess. And I think that may be the most interesting thing. Over the last 2 seasons, you've seen Central and Howard. They've been 1-2. You saw in 2022, Central won. That was actually the deciding factor. They had a tie, but Central beat Howard in the regular season. So they went ahead and went to the Celebration Bowl, and they came out victorious. The following season, Howard, they beat North Carolina Central, got their lick back, and then they went on to the Celebration Bowl. They didn't come out victorious, and then you've seen Central went to the FCS playoffs. So this is a very interesting back and forth, and if they're going to be 1-2 for a third year in a row, I think we'll be in for a really exciting rivalry. If we get into November and you're saying, oh, dang, this is going to be the game that decides it all again, then we're going to be in what's it called? In treat? No. In luck? I don't know. We're going to be in for a treat. There we go. We're going to be in for a treat when it comes to Howard versus North Carolina Central, the third go around in this latest bit of the series. So I'm looking at a couple of things when it comes to Howard and Central. Now, y'all know I'm not a big predictor. That's not what I do. It's not something that I enjoy. It's not something that I feel particularly good or comfortable with, because I don't really like uncertainty. I really don't like moving parts in unknown commodities. If you're going to hear me predict, a lot of times it's about professional sports, because even unknown commodities or moving parts and unknowns are proven commodities. In the NFL, you just have to guess on how they're going to fit with their new team. So it's different. In this situation, you have moving parts mainly at the quarterback position. And is quarterback the end-all, be-all? Not at all. Not at all. I still think that you can have a really good team and have questionable quarterback play, but I don't know if you'll be a championship team with questionable quarterback play, or specifically bad quarterback play. So A lot of times it's your deciding factor when we're speaking about the level that we're at. And right now, we're not talking about being competitors. I think Morgan State was competitive without good quarterback play, but we're not talking about that. We're going to need the freshman to go ahead and transition and improve much in his sophomore year if he's going to come in and Morgan State is going to be a competitive squad. Okay. Now, we're looking at North Carolina Central and Howard, but I used Morgan State as an example of their quarterback play not being able to make up for the fact that they had a dominant, or excuse me, their dominant defense not being able to make up for the fact that they had a poor offense, they had a poor quarterback play. And I don't really know exactly what QB play is going to look like for Howard or what QB play is going to look like for North Carolina Central. This will be interesting. Walker Harris, I think where North Carolina Central is ranked will tell you a lot about how coaches feel about Walker Harris. Let me say this about Harris. To me, I'm ready to get onto the Walker Harris hype train because I've heard about it before Davius Richard ever left the station. See, when Davius Richard was still a North Carolina Central Eagle, you still heard Trei Oliver talking about how Walker Harris is a starting quarterback. When he came in against Mississippi Valley and he threw for 5 touchdowns, it made it a whole lot easier for me to look at him going into his first year as a starter and say, I believe in that guy. You know what else made it easier? The fact that Trei Oliver has been telling me to believe in this guy, even when there was no reason for me to even think about whether I believe or not. So I like Walker Harris. I have a little bit of hype. I believe in Walker Harris, and he's going to have to go out there and prove it. But at the same time, I've heard enough inside where I say they trust him. They've been trusting him. They've been vocalizing it. They've been vocalizing it in situations that you normally don't see it. Davius Richard is a phenomenal quarterback. He is a North Carolina Central legend. For you to still praise Walker Harris when Davius Richard is around, to me, speaks a lot of volume. To me, that speaks volumes on exactly who you think he is. So when Trei Oliver comes out and says the rest of the conference is going to get to know who Walker Harris and see who we've always felt he could be, I believe that. When he comes out after the spring ball and say, yeah, like we know it. There was no competition. There was no competition at North Carolina Central. Everybody knew this was Walker Harris's team. Everybody knew exactly what we were getting out of Walker Harris, or everybody there knew what they were getting out of Walker Harris. And now it's up for us to find out what it is. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. But I think that how the rest of the conference views Harris will really be reflected in where they rank him. And honestly, if you really believe in Walker Harris, you could reasonably put Central at 1. Now you look at Howard, and Howard has a question at the quarterback position, but they don't have that, oh, we got that guy that everybody knows we believe in and we love. We don't have that. Instead, what we have at Howard is we see a team who has a really strong duo at running back. And I care a little bit less about the quarterback issues at Howard. Now, it's going to become a time when it's important because you have to get over that hump. But right now, I'm like, Hunter, James, I trust in that duo to be the engine of the offense. And when I trust in them to be the engine of the offense, that means I don't need the quarterback to come in and I don't need him to make everything happen. So the pressure is significantly lower. The expectations in what I require from him is significantly lower. And that means if he has a lower bar to hit and he hits it, it's easier to hit. If he is able to hit it now, I trust the offense more. Because James and Hunter are 2 fantastic running backs. I can't wait. I don't think that actually Hunter is not in the top 10 unless Gerald has switched it. By the way, we're going to do our top 10. This is almost confirmed, but I feel very confident in saying this. We are going to do our top 10 Thursday and Friday this week. They will be afternoon shows, evening shows. I think probably about 5:30. That's probably the time that we're going to record, or we're going to put them both out. They're going to be live premieres. I should be able to confirm this by tomorrow. On tomorrow's episode, I should be able to confirm this. So I'm very excited for it. But anyway, I don't think that Hunter is on that list, and James not being guaranteed to go to the NFL or go into the NFL draft, he's not on the list at all. So he wasn't even thought about being ranked. He's not, he doesn't meet the qualifications. But yeah, then you look at defensively, they got a guy linebacker who Gerald Huggins says third best linebacker in black college football. You got a guy in Kenny Gallop who he's coming on from a Aeneas Williams finalist. You're looking at a guy who's the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year in the MEAC. You're looking at the defense being strong. You're looking at the running back tandem being strong. I require less of my quarterback with these surroundings. How does that impact the voting? I can't wait to see if Howard and North Carolina Central are 1-2. We'll look at that on Wednesday because remember Tuesday we're not going to do coverage. We're probably going to do if we do, it'll be very brief, but I doubt it. We'll do something else in the morning and then we'll react to MEAC Media Day on Wednesday. But matter of fact, we just spoke about Kenny Gallup. Let's look at him because I think that the battle of who's going to be Defensive Player of the Year starts with Kenny Gallup, but it's not as cut and dry as I thought it was. So let's expand on that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, we're switching things a little bit up because go to FanDuel.com, forget all the backslash, just go to FanDuel.com, and if you're a new customer, you're going to get a daily boost every single day all summer long. But here's where we switch it. If you're an existing customer, you're going to get a new or you can get a bonus every single day all summer long. See, summer is special. I understand that sports may not be sporting the way that you want them to. That's okay. You still have the MLB. You still have the WNBA. Maybe you're waiting for football to come back. I completely understand that. If that is your life and you're waiting, go ahead and get yourself a daily bonus when you go look at the futures, betting on who's going to be the MVP, who's going to be the Offensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, who's going to win the Super Bowl. You can put money down on all of those things right now. You don't have to wait until the first kickoff to do it. You don't have to wait until the preseason to do it. So go ahead and go to FanDuel.com, get your daily bonus every day, all summer long, and make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today. That's the first of its kind, 24/7, all day, every day, live sports network on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out. Now, that being said, let's kick it off with our MEAC preseason Defensive Player of the Year, because I think that this race is one to watch. Now, to me, what these preseason lists do is they give you a little bit of a guide. What they do is they give you a little bit of assistance when you're watching. So if I'm stepping into the conference and I'm looking at, okay, Howard is number one. Let's just go with last year's standings. Howard is number one. That's probably going to be the best team and the team I want to watch the closest. But you look at a team like a Norfolk State or a Delaware State, because they were last. Delaware State's last. They probably scrubs. I'm not watching too closely on them. That's what this is good for. And when you go to an individual player and you look at Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year, when you look at the preseason all conference teams, this just tells you players to watch. We did this with Tennessee State where they have literal player to watch, but this is just the same thing. It's the same principle. It has the same purpose. So when I look at the Defensive Player of the Year, it just says Kenny Gallup is a player that you want to watch on the defensive side. He may be the best player on that side of the ball in this conference. I didn't take the initial route that I wanted to when I sat down to write. When I sat down to write, originally, I was just here to say, this is Kenny Gallup, lock and key. It's done. And I still think that Kenny Gallup is the favorite to be the preseason Defensive Player of the Year. But at the same time, it's not as conclusive as I thought. It's not as indisputable. That's the better word. It's not as indisputable as I thought, because originally I was sitting here, okay, he's an All-American. Let's just go ahead and talk about this. This is the easiest one. This is anticlimactic. That's actually exactly how I wanted to bring it up. I was going to talk about how this was the most anticlimactic of all of the preseason awards, because we know Kenny Gallup is the clear and far away leader for preseason Defensive Player of the Year. I took a couple of the adjectives off, but I do still think that Gallup is the leader for Defensive Player of the Year. But for my younger fans, some of the people who are a little bit of a fan of the Disney Channel era, I should say for my younger fans of Disney Channel, you're looking at me typing, and I just hit that Raven Baxter stare when she get a vision, and I'm just boom, and it hit me. Darian, how dare you forget about Elijah Williams? How dare you forget about Erick Hunter? You love these players, specifically Hunter. I'm a big fan of Erick Hunter. E40 is amazing, and I really hope to do some sort of breakdown on him very, very soon. How are you forgetting these guys now? So now I start thinking, I'm like, dang, let's go through and let's look. Like, make sure you're not being personal. One thing I do is I have feelings on how I feel about these players and how I think about these guys, right? And how I think about these teams and all of this. But I have to make sure that my perception is accurate because sometimes I remember things wrong. Sometimes certain things kick my perception away. Alcorn, how they lost to TSU. No way would I have remembered that they knocked off Jackson State. I probably would have remembered that one, but you get my point. Like PV, I wouldn't even have thought about the whole Alabama State game because of how they lost to FAMU. There was just certain things that just weren't really registering to me. So that's why you go back and you double check yourself. That's what it is, right? So I'll go back and I look. I want to say, what is the case for Gallop? What is the case for Hunter? What is the case for Williams? With Gallop, is very easy. I still think he has the edge. Over the last 3 years, the MEAC Defensive Player of the Year at the end of this season has always been a defensive back, whether it was Gallop last year, because he is the reigning, defending Defensive Player of the Year. It was Khalil Baker the year before that. It was Jacoby Durant in 2021. So you're looking at a history of MEAC Defensive Player of the Years being defensive backs. It's kind of like what I said with the SWAC, where it was a lot of off-ball linebackers. That's what they tend to value. The history is not as long-standing. It's very recent. When you look at the MEAC, it's just been the last 3 years. Prior to that, the last 2 years, it wasn't a defensive back. So it could go either way. But I think that Gallop has recent history on his side. He has the fact that he's repeating or he's coming in as the defending champ. So when you're the defending best player on your side of the ball and you're coming back to the same conference, I would probably say 8 to 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you that preseason Defensive Player of the Year. But I'm looking at Hunter, who led the conference in tackles last year. I'm looking at Williams, who led the conference in sacks last year. I think that these are both formidable opponents. Both of them forced 2 fumbles last year. Hunter had 2 interceptions last year. You're looking at tackles for a loss. I think Williams was number 1 in that as well, and Hunter was number 6. So you're looking at a defense that has 2 guys who are very talented, and in a way, they may actually take away from each other. In a way, Hunter and Williams being on that defense together, it could eat at each other's stats because they're so close and they play a similar role in that front 7. Because when you run the ball towards them, you may still bump. One could take tackles away from the other, could take tackles for a loss away from other. It's not like a linebacker competing with a cornerback. It's not the same dynamic. These guys are competing for some of the same statistics. I will say this. I really do wish that Elijah Williams put on a little bit more weight and just slid inside more. I just think at 270, I don't know if I love his build at the edge defender. I really don't. It's another guy that I want to do a breakdown on. I think that he's a fantastic player, but projecting to the next level, maybe either put on some weight or lose a little bit of weight. But I probably lean towards putting on some weight and sliding towards the interior. But when I do my real breakdown of Elijah Williams, then I'll be able to give you a more confirmed opinion on whether I think he's best suited on the inside or best suited on the outside. Right now, he's been mostly on the outside. But you know what? That's going to be the 3-man race that I'm looking at to start the year. If somebody else comes in and they fight for it, then we'll have that conversation. But as of right now, I'm looking at Williams, I'm looking at Hunter, and I'm looking at Gallop as the 3 men who I want to see if they're able to pull off the Defensive Player of the Year. But if we're just going on the preseason, I still think that Gallop has the early edge. So we'll look at that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. We're expanding to the coaches. We looked at the teams. We looked at individual players. Now let's look at the coaches, specifically Trei Oliver and Chennis Berry, because, man, you get a mic in front of them and you're going to get some quotables as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Trei Oliver and Chennis Berry are going to give up some quotables. They're going to give up some quotables tomorrow. I promise you. Look, one thing that I'll say is I was very pessimistic about SWAC Media Day, but I walked away thoroughly entertained. Seeing guys like Maynard, Graves, I thought that TC flashed a little bit. James Colsey. I walked away really liking James Colsey. I didn't know too much about him. I didn't get too much of a read on him, but sitting there and hearing him talk, it was refreshing. some of his honesty was very refreshing. But I walked away enjoying SWAC Media Day. And when I think about some of the coaches who are in this room, in the MEAC, I think that they have the potential to really give up some good quotables. I thought Mickey Joseph showed a little bit of personality. Did I say Terrence Graves already? Like, I think that Chennis Berry and Trei Oliver, for different reasons, are going to give us some great quotables. I got one from Joseph. Louisiana is my state. New Orleans is my town. I've been riding with that one for a week. The Bluefield State head coach raised up the trophy and said I'm supposed to be here. Like, we've gotten some pretty good, some pretty solid quotables. And I'm just looking at who Berry and who Oliver are. Yeah, we're going to continue that. When I look at Trei Oliver, I think we're going to get, and I'm not looking for nothing messy. I'm not looking for no trashing of the schools. I know that Oliver has once said, excuse me, he once said leading into last season, how bad they beat Howard. I'm not looking for nothing like that. What I actually am looking for out of Oliver is a boisterous boast of Walker Harris. We talked about Harris in the beginning of the show. He's never been one to mince words. He being Oliver in this situation. He's never been one to mince words. He's never been one to hold back. So with that, I expect him to say, yeah, we believe in Walker Harris, and also double and triple and quadruple and quintuple down on how much they believe in Walker Harris, because that's who he is. He seems like a guy. Oliver seems like a guy who, when he believes and he has conviction, he's going to let you know. And I'm sitting here as the guy who had one question: who's going to be your starting quarterbacks? That's not a question for Central. We know who it is going to be, but watch the conviction that Coach Oliver speaks with when he does talk about who the quarterback's going to be. And maybe he'll talk about some other teams. Maybe he'll talk about being in the FCS playoffs versus the Celebration Bowl. I think that when you put a mic in front of Trei Oliver, it's typically entertainment, and it's not messy entertainment. It's just a lot of authenticity. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's the type of coach that I'd want to play for. So I 100% am excited to see what he has to say. As for Chennis Berry, he's the type of guy to make you run through a wall. Like, he has the raspy tone mixed with a general amount of excitement that really makes you want to go for whatever he's talking about. Okay, that's what we're doing. We playing 4-3 all day. We don't care if they come out in spread formation. We're going to play 4-3 and we're going to lock them up with linebackers. You doggone right. Somehow this linebacker is going to turn into a prime Jalen Ramsey. I don't know how it's going to happen, Coach Berry, but the way that you speaking, you got me believing. When I'm looking at Chennis Berry and I'm hearing him talk, it's difficult to not get excited. It's difficult to not feel his emotion. And a lot of people convey emotion, but I don't think a lot of people make you relate with their emotion if you aren't already feeling that way. With Chennis Berry, he's very inspirational. When Chennis Berry, he knows how to galvanize. I can only imagine what speeches on the field are like with Coach Berry. And he's a first-year head coach, so you know he's going to talk about taking over from Benedict going to South Carolina State. The subject matter is there. That's my thing about Oliver, and that's my thing about Berry specifically in this year. The subject matter is there. The personality is there. We're going to get quotables, and I don't want no messiness. I'm saying we're going to get a quotable about how much I believe in my quarterback on the North Carolina Central side. We're going to get quotables about moving up from the D2 to D1 ranks. We're going to get quotables about how much we love the state of South Carolina from Chennis Berry. This is going to be beautiful. And if they set it up the way they set up the SWAC, I think it's going to lean into getting these coaches to talk. I don't know what it was, but I felt like coaches were more vocal this year than they had prior. And one thing that was different is you didn't have the players right next to the coach. Maybe that allowed them to feel like they could loosen up their tie. Maybe they could relax and just be themselves a little bit more. Maybe we're seeing more personalities. Maybe we're seeing more comfort in certain guys. Who knows? But you had the coaches. You had the coaches there with Jay and Tiffany. And you had the players over to a separate side with Simone Stanley. So when you're looking at that setup, I didn't think the players changed too much. They still felt pretty buttoned up, to be honest. They still felt a little here for a job. We're not relaxed. Like, we got to put on the best front, right? That's still, for the most part, how they felt. But the coaches, maybe, I don't know what it was. Maybe they felt like they didn't have to set a visual example. They could relax. I don't know what it could have been. But I'll say this. The coaches were way more relaxed with the SWAC. I'm not looking for all 6 coaches to be like that, but I'm looking for these two in particular. These guys are great with mics in their hand, and we're going to have a mic in their hand, and they're going to be asked multiple questions on Tuesday morning. Look out for Chennis and look out for Trei Oliver. If they say something interesting, I can guarantee you we'll be back on Wednesday to look at this. And Wednesday will be all about it because, like I said, we're trying to do Thursday and Friday, straight top 10 list. Gerald Huggins, 10 through 6 on Thursday, 5 through 1 on Friday. Hopefully we able to pull that out, and hopefully I can confirm that for you tomorrow. But in the meantime, in between time, we'll be back. I think we're probably going to look at Alabama A&M's quarterback situation, maybe PV, maybe both. But we'll look at that on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.